good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening and welcome back to my channel. It is great to see you, and I would love to see some of the comments that come out of this video, because I am going to step into the transgender field because there's some interesting and contradicting things about this particular situation. And now first of all, I've got to say right off the bat that I have absolutely no problem with transgender people. You can do whatever you like to your body. That's what the freedom that we've been granted in our society is, to be able to do. That is absolutely your choice. Although I do believe that you should not be allowed to physically change, give drugs to, or do any kind of permanent alterations to a person's body until they have reached the age of 18 or over and are able to choose for themselves. And there's plenty of good reasons for this. Now, I came across something the other day because this is what's really going on in my mind here, is that there are all kinds of things that we do not allow young people to do under the age of 18. And I'm just going to read off the list here. There's actually quite a few of them. It's actually what you can legally do when you're 18. So until you're 18, you are not allowed to do any of these things. First one, vote. The 26th Amendment of the Constitution, enacted on July the 1st, 1971, established the legal voting age for Americans as 18. 2, join the military. You're not allowed to join the military until you are the age of 18. And again, it's understandable why. 3, donate blood and become an organ donor. 4, work full-time. Now these are fairly simple things. Work full-time until you're the age of 18. And yet we are allowing children as young as 7 make life-altering decisions to have surgery, to take drugs that are going to leave them infertile. It's absolutely staggering. I just, how is it that we will not allow a child to work full-time until they're 18, but we'll allow them to make those kind of decisions? Can't even play the lottery till you're 18. Obtain special driving permits. If you work for a company that has heavy equipment or provides transportation services that require special driving permits, you can't purchase and use tobacco products. Drive late at night. Consent to having sex with someone that is 18 or older. Establish a checking and savings account and apply for loans. Apply for credit cards and establish your creditworthiness by paying your bills on time. Get piercings or tattoos without parents' permission. And of course we see the same thing with school trips. You can't go on a school trip without your parents' permission and consent. Change your birth name. You can't file a lawsuit. You can't get married unless you have your parents' consent. You can't adopt a child. You can't create your will. Buy spray paint, fireworks and adult videos. Purchase a house or a vehicle, or move out of your parents' home. So that is a pretty long list of things that you cannot do until you are the age of 18. Now, what led me into this topic was I read an article, and I'm going to show you the article in a minute. It is about the procedure of changing your gender surgically, and also the drugs that you take to change your hormonal situation. But you are married to the pharmaceutical corporations forever. And so as I started reading this article, it really made me think about this whole idea of changing your gender, because you can, like so many things, when you're sitting in the comfort of your living room, it is the easiest thing. You just snap your fingers and there you go, you change your gender from man to woman, woman to man. And but of course, for example, there is a woman in France who had her face horribly disfigured by a dog while she was attempting suicide. Anyway, they replaced her face. It came on the news as a marvellous surgery that they'd managed to put a new face on this woman. and then all of a sudden that's really all that you hear about the situation, although she has had many surgeries since then, and she has been on anti-rejection drugs and antibiotics and you name it, because it's not her face, it's not part of her body. She's in constant pain. It is a horrible situation. And so you will read when I go through this what it takes to go from a man to a woman, which is actually the easier surgery. But they actually remove your penis and leave the skin, and they poke it inside of your body to make a kind of a pocket to give you a false vagina. And so you can imagine that A, you cannot have children, and B, there is no sexual pleasure because all of that whole network of erogenous zones has been tampered with. So that's a big issue, I am certain. And also, if you're going from a woman to a man, they are cutting out part of your forearm to create that muscle. So you're going to have a big hole in your forearm in here somewhere. Who knows if it actually can function, or how they're going to extend the tube that the pee comes out of. And the potential for infection is unbelievable. I mean, it bears thinking about what's going to actually happen here. I certainly would give it very careful consideration. And we're allowing children as young as 7. There is a woman down in Texas. There's a court case that's been going on for a few years. She is a pediatrician, for goodness sake. And 11 out of 12 jurors agreed that she should go ahead and allow the procedure to start with hormone blockers on this 7-year-old boy. And the father has videos that she has been grooming, the mother's been grooming this child since the age of 3 to be a girl. And you might say, well, that's a strange thing to do. But here is the definition of Munchausen by proxy. Okay, this is where parents, usually the mother, harms or injures the child to get attention from doctors and physicians, surgeons, and this kind of thing. I believe his discovery was quite recent, certainly within the last 50 years, but here we go. 7 years old. If I were to have a 7-year-old in my care and custody, and I gave them my car keys and said, off you go, drive a car, get on a 4-wheeler, go run across the road, I would be hung, drawn and quartered by child services. As I said, why is it we have this huge list of things that you cannot do until the age of 18, and yet all of a sudden this major transformation that is going to take place in your life, we're allowing children as young as 7 to make that decision. There is a case of a father in BC, and all he's asking is a 14-year-old daughter, and they're regarding the fact that he will not stop calling her and keeps calling her him, and this is described as family violence. And of course, in both cases, the judge has ordered a gag on all parties, so it can't be talked about in the press. But the one in Texas, there's been such a huge backlash that even though the jury said that the mother could go ahead, that she should have sole custody of the child and that she can make any decision about the welfare of that child, the judge has overruled the jury's decision and said no, the father has joint custody and he has equal say in the welfare and the health and procedures that is taken upon this child. So thankfully, hopefully, that we're rising above this nonsense and madness. I mean, when you think back, I know when I look back on my childhood, okay, when I was 7, I barely have memories of being 7. When I was in my teens, we all know what it was like. I was absolutely clumsy, awkward, ill-adroit. I felt uncomfortable with my peers. I felt uncomfortable with adults. I didn't seem to fit in anywhere. It was the most confusing time of my life. And to think that I could have made a decision. Well, I mean, there were things that happened to me that were life-altering. I had an accident and damaged my eye, and it ended up in a retinal detachment, and that has had absolutely long-term consequences throughout my entire life. And I was foolish enough to allow that accident to happen. I would never do that now. I'd wear eye protection, for goodness sake. I'd be thinking ahead. I'd be thinking of the long-term consequences. And that is why we have this list for things you cannot do until you are 18. Anyway, let's pop over and see this article, and I'll come back and do a very quick wrap-up. Okie dokie, here we go. From RT, Doctors and Drugs for Life, Big Pharma's profit on the transgender craze. For trans people, the quest to create the body that matches their perceptions is a life devoted to drugs and doctors. For Big Pharma, the challenge is to serve the interests of this group without being blinded by big profit. Western society is currently witnessing something of a medical revolution, which many have denounced as a dangerous experiment, whereby individuals acting as their own medical experts self-diagnose themselves as transgender. What often follows is a regimen of powerful drugs and radical surgical techniques in order to fix the gender they were mistakenly assigned at birth. Has mankind finally outsmarted Mother Nature? While it is still too early to answer that question, one thing remains clear. Members of the growing transgender demographic who opt to undergo gender confirmation surgery inherit a lifetime relationship with the medical industrial complex. And, as is the case with most medical treatment in the US, those services do not come cheap. A new frontier in medicine and profit. For the uninitiated, the medical techniques now available to transgender men, women and increasingly children will probably sound absolutely shocking, and more so when it is realized how little research is available on the subject. RT reached out to the Kelsey Coalition, a non-partisan group that works to protect young people from medical and psychological harms, to better understand the many unseen chutes and ladders a transgender person must pass before acquiring their dream body. The following is a brief primer into this brave new world of gender makeovers, which pushes the boundaries of science to the extremities. Usually the process starts with puberty blockers if the young person's puberty has not been completed. Once the young person confirms their decision to transition, they receive cross-sex hormones, and for males also a blockade of testosterone produced by the testes, and they may opt for subsequent surgeries. Biological males have their testes removed, their penis is inverted, and a neo-vagina is constructed, and they could also get breast implants. For biological females, breasts are amputated, the ovaries and uterus removed, whilst a neopenis and testes are constructed, often from tissue taken from the forearm or leg. In the case of older teens, the process starts with cross-sex hormones and proceeds as described. They don't get puberty blockers if their puberty is fully completed. The procedures have formal medical names, e.g. hysterectomy, mastectomy, oophorectomy, etc. All of these procedures are not risk-free. According to a report by the American Heart Association, people receiving hormone therapy during gender transition had an elevated risk for cardiovascular events such as strokes, blood clots and heart attacks. Where the available data, Kelsey estimates that a total medical bill for gender surgery per year in the United States comes to just over $1.3 billion. That figure, however, is most likely conservative, they say, as it is based on 10,000 known cases. The actual number of cases could be many times higher. After surgery, patients face a lifetime of purchasing estrogen or testosterone hormones with all the inherent risks mentioned above. While routine medical checkups are also a priority, these additional expenses can quickly add up to several hundreds of dollars per month, depending on each individual case. When asked if the pharmaceutical industry stands to profit from the upsurge of interest in the transgender movement, Dr. Crane responded, "Yes, I believe so." Gender dysphoria has been a much more common diagnosis in the last few years compared to previously. He noted, "I think with that we'll see a demand for cross-sex hormones, estrogen for a male to female patient, testosterone for a female to male patient." And here we are from the FDA, over 6,000 dead from puberty blocking drug for transgender children. Parents of kids with gender dysphoria not warned about the dangers of hormone blockers. The drug used to block puberty in children with gender dysphoria is responsible for the death of over 6,300 people, according to the Food and Drug Administration. Again from RT, it's an assembly line. Detransition man says parents encouraging kids to become transgender are guilty of child abuse. A man who lived for 8 years as a trans woman before detransitioning has called out the child abuse from adults who encourage transgenderism in kids, saying it is an abhorrent interference in their natural development. Hundreds of transgender people want to go back to their birth sex, says formerly trans woman. At age 17, Charlie Evans lived as a boy, binding her chest and shaving her head. A decade later, in 2018, she publicly stopped being transgender. In the years since then, she has been contacted by hundreds of transgender people looking to do the same, she recently told the United Kingdom's Sky News. The people contacting her tend to be around their mid-20s. They're mostly female and mostly same-sex attracted and often autistic as well, Evans said. In the past decade, the United Kingdom has seen a 4,500% increase, not a typo, in girls identifying as transgender. Brown University last year tried to repress the first major study looking into rapid onset gender dysphoria as a social contagion that seems to especially affect girls. Okay, I'm just going to go through this quickly. This started in November 2018. Texas dad could lose custody of 6-year-old son for not affirming transgender identity. A Texas father who objects to his ex-wife pushing their 6-year-old son into identifying as a girl is in danger of losing custody of the child after he was accused of abusive behavior. And just a little bit from Pink News, and it's just the words that they use. Judge overrules jury who tried to stop transphobic dad from forcing trans daughter to live as a boy. A judge in Dallas has overruled the jury in a custody case where a transphobic dad, Jeffrey Younger, is attempting to gain custody of his 7-year-old trans daughter and force her to live as a boy. Well, he is a boy. It's his mom that wants him to be a little girl. A pediatrician, for goodness sake. A jury rules against Texas dad fighting 7-year-old son's gender transition. This is October 22nd, 2019. On Monday, a jury ruled against the Texas father, Jeffrey Younger, attempting to stop his 7-year-old son from a gender transition being facilitated by Dr. Ann Georgioulas, the boy's mother and Younger's ex-wife. With a consensus of 11 out of 12 jurors, the jury decided not to grant Mr. Younger's sole managing conservatorship over his 2 twin boys. And finally, some common sense. Texas judge rules that father retain joint custody in case of transgender 7-year-old. October 24, 2019. A judge in the 255th District Family Court of Texas has ruled that a father should have a say in his son's medical treatments in the case of James Younger, a 7-year-old boy whose mother believes he is a transgender female named Luna. And this is British Columbia's Supreme Court. Father gagged, found guilty of family violence for calling his trans daughter a she. Last week, Justice Francesca Mazzari of the Supreme Court of British Columbia, Canada, declared a father guilty of family violence against his 14-year-old daughter on the sole basis that he had engaged in expressions of rejection of her gender identity. These expressions revolved entirely around his polite refusal to refer to his daughter as a boy in private, as his steady choice to affirm that she is a girl in public. As previously reported, the BC Supreme Court ordered in February that a 14-year-old Maxine receive testosterone injections without parental consent. Accordingly, Maxine began regular injections at British Columbia BC Children's Hospital over the course of the last 2 months. Her father, Clark, strongly objects to this treatment and immediately sought to reverse the decision in the BC Court of Appeal. Hoping to raise awareness of his case, Clark gave a number of interviews to media outlets, including The Federalist. In these interviews, he repeatedly referred to his daughter as a girl, stating to The Federalist that she is a girl, her DNA will not change through all of these experiments that they do. While many might take this to be an honest statement of biological fact, Mazzari quoted it as a prime example of Clark's family violence of a public denial of Maxine's gender identity. Mazzari convicted Clark of this violence and issued a protection order preventing him from speaking to journalists or the public about his case. Absolutely, if you want to change your body, if you want to transition from male to female, female to male, I have absolutely no problem, and you should be allowed to do that. If you are suffering from gender dysphoria, absolutely. However, allow your body to grow first. Allow all of those internal changes that are taking place as you mature, allow them to take place naturally, and decide then, when you are 18, what you are going to do with your body. And if parents can't make that decision, then doctors must make that decision for them. Doctors must counsel parents to allow their children to develop normally. There are so many phases that you go through. We played dress up, we played shop, we played doctors and nurses, we played cowboys and Indians. Our imaginations were running absolutely wild. Who knows what we could dream up in our young and fertile minds. Allow that to develop naturally. Allow them to go through these phases. Watch with interest and awe at all of the wonderful changes that go through from children up to full maturity. And if at that time they want to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, absolutely, that is your choice. But at least reach the age of majority. Or let's do away with the entire list and we would just allow our children to run around without any supervision whatsoever. I mean, for goodness sake, there are people who've gone to court for allowing their children to play unsupervised, for goodness sake, at that age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How can you possibly have these two completely opposite ideas in effect? I have no idea. It should change. We should be aware of this. I believe it is child abuse to force a parent's will. You know, this is hockey parenting on steroids, for God's sake. And we have an absolute obligation to explain all of the ramifications of a gender change, a sex change, to our children. Because it will not be easy. And of course, as you saw in the articles, there are many children, many adults who want a reversal. And also just how Big Pharma is hooked into this. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And again, as we were talking earlier about the media, I wonder how much Big Pharma is driving the agenda and actually creating this fad. Because I never heard of gender dysphoria when I was growing up. Yes, there were people who were gay and lesbian, although it obviously wasn't spoke about in that day and age, but the whole concept of transgender just it wasn't there as far as I could see, and where it has come from. This is such a modern phenomena, and it only deals with something like 1 or 2% of the population. Yes, it's a stunning phenomena. That's all I can say. It's a stunning phenomena. Okay, well, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we will talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.